Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. This is Julie Bruns, and you are about to be inspired. I am so excited to share my conversations with amazing people from all walks of life who figured out how to be happy, peaceful, and content doing work they love and making the world a better place so that you can see what's possible for your life. I can't wait to hear what you think. Send me an email and let me know one thing you're taking away from this episode. And never forget, anything really is possible. So hi, everyone. My guest today is Kute Blackson. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So Kute and I were introduced by someone on his team that reached out to me about having him on a podcast. And I said, does he love what he does? And I think I looked you up briefly. Really, I just click on the link someone sends me, and then if I can tell just from your work or your website that you love what you do, then it's like, okay, then it's a match. So that's why you're here today. And thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I don't know anything about you other than what I just saw briefly. So tell me about how you figured out how to, first of all, what you do now. And then did you always see yourself as a young boy or young adult in this career now? So what brought you to what you're doing now? What do you do? And then what brought you here?
Yeah, I'm a nationally best-selling author. I have 2 nationally best-selling books. You Are the One, The Magic of Surrender. I travel the world, speaking, teaching, seminars, lectures, transforming as an entrepreneur. Also have some businesses, but really I'm really focused on helping people find themselves, find their purpose, and live that purpose and have impact in the world in the most authentic way. 20 years ago, I started coaching people before coaching was popular, and built a very successful coaching business, and clients kind of found me from all around the world. Inc. magazine calls me the mindfulness guru to the billionaires, since I have a lot of very high level clients. But really, one-on-one, I don't do as much anymore, but I don't coach people, I uncoach people, I unteach people, I untrain people, I uncondition people from the patterns of conditioning that we have developed over time so that they can connect to their true selves and live that. And so I'm an uncoach. I create experiences and processes that, whether it's one-on-one, small group, large groups, that help you get free. It's about freedom. The essence of my work is about helping people be free and live that freedom. And so I also do work in companies and corporations and help with the teams. And so for me, yes, I always had a sense of wanting to inspire people in some way. As a young boy, I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana. My mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. I live in the US now, Los Angeles specifically. So I feel like I'm a citizen of the world, but as a young boy, I would feel people's pain very deeply, and I'd feel people's feelings and emotions very deeply. I was very sensitive in that way, and there was always a part of me that wanted to alleviate people's suffering. I didn't know what that would look like necessarily as a kid, 5 years old, 6 years old, but there was this deep sense and deep desire that I was here to do something like that. And so for me, I grew up in a bit of what some would consider a bit of a different environment. It didn't seem that different for me. It was all I knew, so it seemed normal. But my first memories as a young boy was literally seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand that this man walks on, wipes it on her face, and stands up. I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear. The same man whose hand she picked up would look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick, stand up." And he would touch a person who, let's say, hadn't had eyesight in 10 years, and they would suddenly start seeing, and somebody would come in with crutches, and he would say, "Throw your crutches away, start walking," and they would start walking. The kind of stuff that you see on TV, and you wonder if the stuff is real. And I just grew up seeing it every day. So I honestly didn't think anything that special or unusual about it. I think that was one of the blessings too, because I grew up with the sense that everything was possible. I grew up with the sense that there were no real limitations. So this man was my father. He built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa. He was a very spiritual, mystical, metaphysical type of guy, which was a blessing. My mother was Buddhist, so that was a whole nother blessing. So I grew up meditating as a kid. And he built a huge church, 300 churches in London, hundreds of thousands of followers, a huge church in London, one church, about 4 to 5,000 people. And when I was age 8, I started speaking in my father's churches, and that began my speaking career. And when I was 14, I was ordained as a minister into my father's church, given the mandate to take over. Now, I always knew I wanted to help people, but I knew it wasn't through the church or through religion or through my father's organization. But my entire life was set out for me. My entire life was carved out for me. And so I knew that this wasn't my path. I knew that this wasn't my destiny. I knew that this was not my trajectory. And so when it was announced, my heart sank, and I felt a knot in my stomach, but I was too afraid to speak my truth and tell him that this is not my path. And when I turned 18, is when my life shifted. For me, I always had a love. You talked about love. Do I love what I do? I always had a love. I would sneak into we lived behind my father's church. So I would sneak into my father's church in the middle of the night, and I would speak to the empty chairs and give seminars to the empty chairs, because I really loved, I loved communicating. I loved speaking. I just loved transforming people in some way. And I would imagine myself as an 11, 12-year-old kid transforming thousands of people. And so it was a love for me, personal development, spirituality, this field. Yes, I have a business. Yes, I've become successful, but I never went into this field to make a living. I never went into this field for money. I went into this because there was a love. I dreamt of writing books and those books being read by millions of people. I dreamt of, speaking on auditoriums of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. I dreamt of people's lives being transformed. And so it's always been a love for me to serve and be a part of people's evolution. And so when I turned 18, I had to make a decision. Do I follow the expected path for my life and take over my father's church? And I looked into my future, and I saw that I could follow the expected path and take over, but I projected into my future, age 20, age 30, age 40, age 50, and on and on. And I felt such a pain of self-betrayal. I felt such a pain that it was so intense that I felt a soul suicide. And I knew what I had to do, which was leave, which was terrifying and scary. But I felt this calling, on the other hand, to come to the US, to come to America, to come specifically to Southern California, because I developed a love. Basically, I started reading a lot of the self-help books at a young age. In my father's bookshelf, there were thousands of self-help books, everyone from Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson and Tony Robbins. And so these were my icons growing up. And I realized, wow, there's a different way to inspire than religion or the church. This is what I want to do. And so I felt this calling to come to the US and meet and go into this field and meet these people and study with these people and learn from these people. And so at 18, sometimes what your soul guides you to do doesn't always make sense to your mind. And sometimes what your soul guides you to do isn't always convenient. But I'm a real believer that if you follow your soul and if you follow that internal guidance system, you will always end up in the right place, even though the route that you take is not the most expected. And so I spoke to my father, which was terrifying because we weren't close. And I told him my greatest fear was to lose his love, for his disapproval. And so I had to face my deepest fear in order to claim my life, and told him I'm not taking over. We didn't speak for 2 years, which was incredibly difficult and challenging. And when I took that leap, because it was undeniable, long story short, I ended up winning a green card in the green card lottery, which then enabled me to come to the US, 2 suitcases, $800, knew no one in the country, following a dream, following my soul's calling. And as an 18-year-old kid, showed up here and went and found teachers and mentors and authors, went and found many of these folks, studied with many of them, and then traveled. I traveled to Thailand, studied with monks, traveled to Israel, studied with rabbis, ended up in India, and had some really profound spiritual experiences that broke me open in a certain way to a deeper sort of knowing of my true self. And it was out of that sense of freedom. And it was a freedom that I didn't have money, I didn't have success, I had nothing, but I felt free in myself. And it was honestly out of that freedom I felt that I wanted to help people 20 years ago. And from that impulse, one person showed up, and then another person showed up, and their lives transformed. And it just evolved till people started coming from all over. And 20 years later, books and what have you. So that's a bit of my story.
It's fascinating that you, well, I love that you saw when you were saying everything is possible, which I love that word, which is why it's part of the title of my book. But I believe everything's possible and nothing's impossible, virtually almost nothing. But I love that you were around the church, but you still had this spiritual side. I think that religion and spirituality are separate. I see them as separate things. I mean, I know that it's kind of the same purpose, but I'm a spiritual person, not necessarily a religious person, but I love that you were around the church, but it sounds like your dad's church was still very spiritual, not just religious. And so you got a taste of what all that spirituality and self-development and all of that would be and wanted to be around it. And then as soon as you were like, I could take this church over, you're like, well, that's not like how you knew. You said you asked your soul and you knew right away, maybe not even right away, but you got a very profound feeling like this is bad or sad, or this is not good for me. It's not what I want. And that you saw that you could still do it in another way. And I know it's obviously unfortunate that you and your dad didn't see eye to eye initially, but you saw a different way. He saw the way he was doing it. You saw a different way. And then you just had to go and say, well, I'm going to do it either. I'm doing it anyways. And obviously it's no accident that you got this green card to come to the United States, because that's what you were drawn to do. And you were following your guide, like you said, your spirit. So it's a beautiful story in trusting your heart. I was talking about this with someone else recently, like that when you ask the right questions and you follow the right guidance for yourself and what you know is true, you really can't go wrong. Even if you make a mistake, you're still on the right path. It might not be perfect. It might not be exactly what you need it to be, but you just keep asking the right questions and going with that, with that guidance. You can't go wrong. I'm not saying everything's going to be easy or perfect. Right? You can't go wrong.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So so now your dad, well, all those years later, you said that you didn't talk for a couple of years, but now are you and your dad back to being?
Well, yeah, we didn't speak for a few years, and it's a long story, but I think a few years into the process, I came to a place of really forgiving my father. And I was really mad at my father, angry, didn't even know I was angry, to be honest, but it was more unconscious. And when I really acknowledged that, I got to a place of having to forgive my father, because I realized I wasn't conscious of it, but I was wallowing in a sense of victimhood, a sense of like entitlement, like my dad owes me something and he owes me. And then I realized, look, I'm a grown adult at this point. Yep. And I had this epiphany while wallowing in my room many years ago that nobody owes me anything. It was like this voice that said, no one owes you anything. He doesn't owe you. He's given you life. God's given you everything. Universe is giving you everything. Right. The rest of what your life is now up to you. And I think my life shifted on when two things happened. In that moment, when I gave up the sense of entitlement and I gave up the sense of blame, and I took full responsibility for myself and my life in this moment. No, what happened is what happened. But when I took responsibility for how I feel and what I do now, I chose to forgive my father, realizing he couldn't give me more. He did what he could based on his upbringing and his childhood and his conditioning and his parents and all his culture and all that he knew. He did what he could, and when I really just made the choice to take my power back and forgive him and acknowledge I love him, I forgive him, something shifted. I mean, and a long story short, again, he called me literally that week after 2 years when I really got to this place of forgiveness, and we began to make amends. And now we're really, really, we're really close now. And it's incredible and it's beautiful and it's.
You decided to forgive him and didn't call him. You decided,
but I think.
So in that week or whenever that couple of days you decided
within maybe sooner, but it could have been like the next day. It's a long time ago, but literally I got to the place where I just truly forgave him, and acknowledged how much I love him, and I forgave him. And, I didn't call him, but somehow, you see, to really get complete with someone, we often think it's about the other person. Well, I'm not going to forgive until they make amends with me. I'm not going to forgive until they say sorry because they did it. Right. And we don't realize that we end up giving away so much power to the other person when we wait for the other person and we put our freedom in the other person's hands. And real forgiveness is not even for the other person. It's really to set ourselves free. And it's not even with the other person. The real completion is your relationship with the other person within your own self. And so you don't even need the other person to get free and complete. And when I really got that, I thought, nothing. Here I am waiting for my father to apologize and wait, because I'm right and I'm true. And I was right and I was justified. It just wasn't bringing me more freedom. It wasn't bringing me more happiness. It was just keeping me stuck. And so when I saw that, I thought, wow, I'm giving him a lot of power over me still. He still has power over me. He doesn't even know it. And when I got that, I thought, do I want to be right or free? Do I want to be right or happy? And I just made a choice that I wanted to be happy. And unconsciously, and maybe folks listening in might be able to see this pattern. I didn't see it until this moment. On some level, I was unconsciously sabotaging my life. It wasn't conscious. I was unconsciously holding back, like going to that next level, because there was an unconscious part of me that wanted to prove my father how wrong he was. And you see, you weren't there for me, and this is why I am the way I'm not. I don't have opportunities. Yeah, and when I gave up that sense of victim, he called. Life began shifting. Obviously, there was a lot of work I did to move things to that next level, but at that young stage of my life, things really shifted. And the other thing that really, I think, helped me in that phase and stage of my life, and I think this is a practical thing that those listening in may be able to do, use, or apply in their lives. One of the things that I think keeps us stuck as human beings are all the ways that we lie to ourselves. As human beings, we lie to ourselves about who we are, about what we want, about what we feel, and that keeps us stuck. For me, one of the lies I was telling myself was, I don't care, and I'm not angry. I'm fine. And the truth is, I was full of anger and pain and resentment and rejection and ultimately hurt, which I wasn't acknowledging because I didn't want to give my father that pleasure, so to speak. And so one of the ways we keep ourselves stuck, all the lies we tell ourselves, we stay in relationships that aren't right out of fear and guilt. We work jobs that we hate out of, insecurity, searching for security, and we compromise our integrity so often. And so I think that in order for someone to really begin transforming their life, there is no transformation without truth. And the first thing we have to be willing to do is acknowledge the truth. And that starts by acknowledging all the things we are lying to. Like, question number one, what am I lying to myself about? What are the lies that I'm telling myself? And have the willingness to own it, have the willingness to face it, have the willingness to just authentically tell yourself the truth about the lies, because it's the lies that keep you stuck. And I think that real truth, like truth telling, to feel the truth, acknowledge the truth, speak the truth, that is real spiritual practice. That is real meditation. That is real yoga. And so I think many times we're afraid of telling the truth, like I was, because we're afraid of the consequences. Oh, I won't have a relationship with my father. The relationship will end. And so I often tell people, take the consequences, or take the pressure off of yourself of having to take any action. When you take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action, then you can just acknowledge the truth. Like, hey, I'm not in love anymore. And you don't have to break up, but just feel the truth and see what that does. I hate my job. Feel that and just let that marinate inside and feel what that does. Because many times we end up unconsciously playing a game of confusion. I don't know, and I'm not sure, and I'm confused. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm confused, when deep down we know there's a part of us that knows everything, because at the deepest level, we are everything. And so sometimes it's safer to be confused, for instance, about what my purpose is, because if I'm not clear what my purpose is, I don't have to take action. I don't have to put myself out there. I don't have to take the risk. I don't have to take the rejection. And I can remain in the safety of my comfort zone and always have the hope of the future fantasy and possibility. And so what lies am I telling myself? Really be raw and real and honest. And I like to say, we have to want the truth more than we want what we have. We have to want the truth more than we want what we want. Real freedom isn't free. Real freedom requires that we let go of what's no longer aligned. And we often hold on to what's no longer a match, or what's no longer aligned, out of comfort, out of safety, without realizing that holding on to that lie, holding on to what's not right, just blocks our blessing, blocks our ability to move to that next level. And so what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know, to just sit with those questions? And then lastly, sit with, what are the lies that I'm telling myself? What is it costing me? What is it costing me? There is a cost to lying to yourself. When we lie to ourselves, it's painful. It's meant to be painful. It's not meant to feel good. And we often say, why do I feel pain? Pain is a blessing. Pain is a gift. Pain is a signal that we are not telling ourselves the truth, or we're betraying ourselves in some way. And yet what we tend to do is we numb it, we distract it, we avoid it, we anesthetize it, we drink it away, sex it away, drug it away, social media it away, just so we don't feel the pain. But I think if we're willing to say, okay, what is the cost? And thirdly, just create the time to just be with the pain, to not run from it, because that pain is simply feedback. That pain is feedback showing us where we need to course correct. And I think when we can feel that pain, it starts a process inside of momentum and movement and pushing us into action. And so I think where I had to start was a radical sense of telling myself the truth. And where I think people can start is, okay, what lies am I telling myself? That's a place to begin.
What do you think? So you learned a lot you learned a lot of spiritual lessons, and I would say everything you learned pretty early in your life. Even just like being in the church and knowing that you wanted to speak to people. I mean, that's unique. I don't know a lot of people that knew at a super young age how they wanted to be in the world and what they wanted to do. When you look back at what you learned so much early, my question is there anything you wish you'd learned earlier in your career that you figured out, maybe in your late 20s or 30s or whatever, that you wish you would have known earlier? I'm thinking for that question for you, it's probably not so much because you learned a lot.
No, yeah, I mean, this is not a big answer, but it is not really like that deep an answer. But I actually wish that perhaps, at 18, I had learned, it's going to sound funny, but I probably learned how to invest my money as a young kid, because as a kid, 18, 19, 20, you're not even thinking about that stuff. But I actually wish I had just started investing a little bit every month and learn about compound interest. Because if I'd done that for the last, from 18, the last 20 years, who knows what? And so I think little things like that because for me, I grew up in a very spiritual setting where money wasn't that important and money didn't really matter. And I've never done it for money, and I never did it for money, and I never really cared for money until I realized, in this physical 3-dimensional reality, you kind of need money, and not just money to eat and survive or have experiences, but if I want to have impact and feed the kids and provide education and be of service. You can't feed the children in Africa with prayers. You can't feed the children in Africa with meditations. It requires money to buy the food. And so when I started, and when I started realizing, money has a place and it's important, which was a bit later in life, then I put some emphasis on it. But so I wish I had put emphasis on it in the beginning, in a healthy way,
right?
So that I could perhaps have set myself up earlier and then had more of an impact. So that's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing. The rest just, sometimes you just have to learn stuff as you go along. There's no other way. There's no other way. Like, for instance, in my new book, The Magic of Surrender, it was inspired by my mother passing away. And my mother passed away due to stomach cancer in 2017. And I got to spend a year with her. And it was honestly what started off as the worst year turned out to be the best year, because I got to spend time with her, and I was so busy, literally running around. The day I got the phone call that my mother was passing away, that my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer, I just got off Larry King, which was like a childhood dream. And I was on this book tour, and my book was like bestseller, You Are the One. And life has a way of humbling you, basically. And so I got to fly back from LA to London literally every month to sit with my mother in her 8-hour chemo sessions and hold her hand. And during that time, I got to be with her and sit with her. And take the time I had never bothered taking because I was so busy trying to live life and succeed and fulfill my dreams that I had, and all of which were great. But I realized that I had missed out on so much of these ordinary moments of just sitting with my mom and having conversations and, doing nothing and taking a walk in the park because I didn't have time. And so for the first time in my life, as I sat with my mother in her chemo, as we would sit and have tea together, as we would sit and take a walk in the park, my only regret was, wow, why did I wait till she was dying? Why did I wait till this moment to make this important? And in a strange way, I got to thank cancer because it brought us closer. We were already very close, but it really brought us to another level of intimacy and closeness. And so if there's something I wished I had known earlier, it would have been to prioritize the meaningful, ordinary moments of life that seemingly might be mundane, but really they are everything. They're sacred. And so it was in the face of death that I realized how special and important those, up here, but in here. And so that's something I wish I'd known, that I had spent maybe more Christmases with her. And life is short. Look, we're all going to die. We're all going to, Jesus died, Buddha died, Mother Teresa died, Gandhi died, Bob Marley died, Bruce Lee died, Muhammad Ali died, Mandela died. We're going to die. And I think the more we can embrace death, the more we can feel our death, I always tell people, meditate on your death, hold it close, because the more you can embrace your death is the more you can embrace life. So many of us, we're so busy avoiding death that we don't realize that we're not living life fully, and we waste time on things that are not even that important. And so I think the people that died yesterday or died last week or in a tsunami or natural disaster had no idea that they weren't going to come home that night and look their loved ones in the eyes and say, hey, I really love you. Forgive me. I'm sorry. And so I would ask everyone to sit with, if death came right now, would you be ready? And if not, why not? And what's ungiven and what's unsaid and what's uncommunicated and what's unexpressed and what's unforgiven? Because life is short. When we die and we meet our maker, we can't go to God and say, can I get a refund on those 2 years?
I have to go back. I can say this. Yeah, you had a real gift with your mom knowing that she was sick and then having all that time, because a lot of people will just find out and then weeks later it's like, that's it. I had a similar experience where my brother's wife got sick. There were several months, but at least you could spend that time instead of just this, or you die in a car crash.
Yeah, it was a blessing. It was a blessing.
Yeah. To have that time and experience with her. So let me ask you our final question for today. What's one new thing you're taking away from our conversation that you shared or that we learned together today?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
What's one new thing you'll be taking away from our conversation today?
What's one new thing from our conversation? I don't know if it's new. I don't know if there's anything like new, because I'm always just intrigued to have the conversation and just see where it goes without any agenda. And, I love just having the conversation. So I don't know if there's anything new that's come either way, but it's been a beautiful conversation. And it's been beautiful just to rap and share and talk and, and inspire and hear your thoughts as well.
Learning from new people. I love it too. So you have a new book coming out. Tell us the name of the book and then the other books you mentioned, and then people want to.
Yeah, the first book is You Are the One, but the new book is coming out in paperback May the 3rd. It's already out. So it's called The Magic of Surrender, How to Find the Courage to Let Go. And it's all about surrender and helping you reframe surrender and harness the power of surrender so that you can fulfill your destiny. In our culture, I think so often we have this concept, this misconception of surrender, that surrender is giving up, waving the white flag. Surrender means you're weak, you're going to be a victim, you're going to get left behind, you won't manifest your goals, dreams, or desires, that we know we shouldn't do it, but we resist it. And so or that surrender means you're going to get less in life. And I'm really saying, no, surrender is the most powerful thing that you can do if you really understand it. It's the secret to manifestation. It's the key to your next level. All of the great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, the folks I'd mentioned, they all surrendered themselves to life, to a vision and a purpose that was bigger than themselves. And in surrender, they transcended themselves, and they transcended their egos, and they transcended their human limitations, and they accessed the dimension of their true potential that was beyond them. And so I'm saying that if you surrender, what if you don't get less than, but you got more than you could even imagine for yourself, more than you could create with your mind's capacity to manifest? What if you got more magic? And that's why the book is called The Magic of Surrender, because magic is the beyond. Magic is what's more. And we all want the magic,
yes,
but we often don't want to surrender. We want to hold on to who we were and hold on to what we had, and it doesn't work that way. And so I'm simply saying, if you want more magic in your life, surrender. And it's letting go of control, letting go of trying to force life, and being open, take the limits off of life so that you can be open and available and allow life to lead you and show you. And when you truly surrender, you're open to the infinite possibilities. And what life can manifest and do through you is often more than what we can even imagine for ourselves. Yes. So that's the essence of the book. So it's out now on Amazon.
Well, congratulations. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to checking it out. And so the website, what's the best way? If
people want to get in touch, there's a couple of websites. There's kuteblackson.com, my name, Kute Blackson.com. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, Kute Blackson, say hi. My podcast, Soul Talk. If people feel called to go on a deep dive, one of the favorite things I do is a 12-day event in Bali. Truly life-changing. It's really where I take people through a transformational process of unconditioning. They can go. It's called Boundless Bliss. I do it twice a year, July and December. www.boundlessblissbali.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you today and learning more about you. And I'm excited to follow your work and see what else you do.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Take care. Thanks for listening. I hope you loved this episode. Don't forget to like us, subscribe, review, and share it. I hope you were truly inspired. And for a little more inspiration, don't forget to pick up my book, Peace, Possibilities, and Perspective: 8 Secrets to Serenity and Satisfaction in Your Life and Career. I can't wait to get you love in your life.